All right. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Flagler Cares and One Voice for Volusia, welcome to the 2021 Health and Human Services Summit. My name is Lori Clark, and I will be the moderator for this session. You have joined the session titled Give Me 5 Social Emotional Competencies and How to Build Them. All participants will be muted during the session. There will be a Q&A time at the end of the session for you to pose questions. You may raise your hand using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. We will then call on you and allow you to unmute yourself. You may also submit questions during the training in the chat box, and we will pose them to the trainers throughout the session and at the end of the session if time allows. Thank you to the sponsors who made this event possible: Advent Health, Career Source Flagler Volusia, SMA Healthcare, Magellan Complete Care, Department of Children and Families, and the House Next Door. It is my pleasure to introduce your trainers for the session, Nancy Walsh and Marcey Kinney.
Thank you, Lori, and good morning, everybody. I want to thank you for choosing to join us this morning. We have a nice group gathered together to talk about this really important topic. And thanks for choosing to participate today. I know there's a lot of great presenters today, and I'm hopeful that we're all going to have a great day and get some good information to improve our practice. I also want to thank Dr. Kinney from Bethune-Cookman for joining me today. She is a great resource on this topic, and we've had a really great time putting this presentation together for you. There's so much content that we want to share, and I want to bring your attention to a resource page that we've put together for you. So it's all kinds of links to all of the different resources that we used to put this presentation together. So while we're going to skim the surface of some of these things that we're talking about, if you want to know more, there are links right there for you to further explore based on what your needs are for the work that you do. So again, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to let Dr. Kinney introduce herself and tell you a little bit about herself.
Hi, everybody. Yes, Nancy, I think you did a good job. I am coming from Bethune-Cookman University. My background is in special education, primarily in early childhood and the use of assistive technology with children with autism. But this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I know that social emotional learning is everything. And once we know how to connect, it's all about connections. We can move the needle for students and children and adults and anybody else who needs support. So I'm excited to be here.
All right. And so similar for me, total transparency, I spent 17 years in early learning before coming to the Early Learning Coalition. So I also come from that background of 0 to 5. Here at the coalition, I've been involved mostly in quality work, most recently with the quality and inclusion team. And the work that I'm most proud of that I've done with the quality and inclusion team is really bringing social emotional learning to the front and helping childcare providers understand the importance of it as the foundation for everything else. So again, great passion for this work and really pleased to be able to share it with you today. And all right. Oh, go ahead, Marcey.
Can we ask everybody, if you guys don't mind, if you could just throw in the chat kind of where you're coming from and what profession you're in, because I know this is a broad group, and so it would kind of help us to sort of know who our audience is. So if you don't mind, thanks.
Yes, yes. And on that note, hello to all. I see a lot of familiar names. So if we've met before, thank you so much for coming and good to see you. And if we haven't met before, thank you so much for joining and happy to have this time to meet and get to know you maybe a little bit. So why are we here? We really want to begin by identifying the 5 social emotional competencies. What we're going with is the definition from CASEL. And then we want to move forward to kind of see what they look like. So we're going to definitely use some video today and help you see what these things really look like. And then get some ideas about how we can increase social emotional competence, no matter what age person we're working with. So it might, you might be thinking of kiddos 0 to 5, you might be working with teens, you might be working with families, but no matter what the age group is that you're in, I think you're going to get some ideas today about how to help your clients or those folks that you work with increase their social emotional competence to make them successful in whatever else you're trying to do together. And then lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about adopting a growth mindset, not only for those we work with, but also for ourselves, so that we can come from a place of always learning and growing. So we're excited to do those things with you. On your resource sheet, you do have a little bit of an article about the importance of social emotional learning and why we need to focus on it. Just the skills that it builds really make everything else in life easier, and definitely leads to positive behavior, reduced misconduct, reduced stress, reduced substance abuse, just more success in school and in life. So that's why we are so excited to share this with you today. And also want to spend just a moment talking about, why are we here? Why is this sometimes challenging to teach or to practice with people? And it's really a kind of learning that doesn't come from prescriptive curriculum or flashcards or rote types of teaching. It's really based on experience, and it's based on the needs of the people in the setting and the setting itself. And so it can be a little bit challenging to teach social emotional skills. And so we're hopeful that we can give you some tools to make it a little bit easier for you today. And I just need to make sure to demystify the alphabet soup when I say it's actually CASEL that this framework comes from, and that is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And these standards have been adopted nationwide. School districts, lots of different organizations and areas have adopted this as their way of thinking about social emotional learning. So promise we didn't just make it up. All right. So here they are, the 5 competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So what do those things look like? We're going to find out in a minute, because we have a terrific video from Edutopia, where you're going to see some principals and teachers and different professionals kind of help you understand and show you some examples of what this looks like in settings. And as we do that, and as we progress through our time today, I'd like for you to think about a person that you work with, somebody in your life maybe, that you wish could do a little bit better with their social emotional skills. And sometimes that's a good kind of frame to think about your learning, is how can I apply what I'm learning in this moment, in this particular section of our training today, with that person? It kind of makes it a little bit more real. So take a moment, close your eyes, think about that person, bring them to the front of your mind, and we'll go ahead and watch this video. The video is about 6 minutes long, Marcy.
It is. It's the only long one, we promise. This is the long video, but it does really do a nice job of highlighting everything.
It does. We are happy to share it with you, excited to share it with you. So take a breath and relax, and here we go.
Social and emotional skills are the essential skills for success in school, work, and life.
Sorry about that.
Social emotional learning centers their mind and body. It reduces their emotional tension so they can be open to new content and material. We find that academic outcomes increase exponentially when students are nurtured, loved, and cared for, that we get much more out of them when we first address social emotional needs. So for us, it's actually an academic intervention and not just an emotional one.
If we expect students to be college and career ready, it's important for us to focus on these skills and competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Self-awareness is the ability to identify your emotions, to be able to tie thoughts and feelings to behaviors.
We find that self-awareness is one of the hardest things for young people, being aware of their own body space and the impact of their words and emotions on other people. So a lot of the work we do is reflective, through conflict mediation, through circles, through journaling, having them see their own impact on the world, and then how to shift that or make a different choice next time.
Self-management is the ability to self-motivate, to have self-control, to regulate one's emotions.
In the classroom, that may be a breathing exercise, or that might be counting 5 or taking a break.
So with students who don't really know how to deal with their anger or don't really know how to resolve conflict, we're giving them a tool that helps them deal with it in a less stressful way.
Social awareness is about embracing diversity, showing empathy for others, Activities might include service learning projects, addressing social justice issues. Role-playing is a great opportunity for students to address how a person might have felt in a conflict on the playground.
We're going to see if other people have had some of the very same experiences around bullying that we've had.
You're in my boat if you have a bully now.
Wow, I see a lot of people.
Relationship skills are important in project-based learning. It's the ability to work cooperatively with someone, to resolve conflict.
It's the one skill you need your whole life. You may not need calculus tomorrow, but you have to know how to work in relationship, whether it's for a coworker or a life partner. You have to know how to handle conflict and how to handle challenges.
Sometimes at recess, Hermione would come over and just start talking about us and saying mean things.
Is it your job to make Danae's job at school hard?
No, I know it's a form of bullying, and sometimes I'll say sorry to her.
So you choose to be someone's ally and make a better choice.
Responsible decision-making is considering the well-being for self and others. It's evaluating the consequences for various behaviors or actions. We do this through shared agreements, one-to-one problem solving, or having students debate an issue.
If you were like, hey, Kashida, how much does an A cost in this class? And you took out your wallet and I was like, I think $50 would work. Which one of us would be corrupt in that case?
You're the one that's asking for the money?
We're truly teaching these students to be productive citizens. We're teaching them life skills. We're teaching them how to problem solve effectively. We're teaching them how to be resilient.
I think of all the billions of dollars we've spent on Title I and all these intervention programs, and when all is said and done, what do we have to show for it? I think we're trying to teach technical things instead of devoting some of the resources to teach who you are as a person. Once you know who you are, then learning becomes exciting because you've already established a discipline.
It's important for teachers and principals to understand that it can't be a binder off the shelf. It can't be something that happens from 2:15 to 4:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It has to be part of the school culture.
Giving teachers flexibility, giving them a range of skills, giving them different ways that it can look, and allowing them to take their own personality and match that to what they want in their classroom has been the best way to get authentic, true practice.
If we continue to do what we've always done, we're always going to get what we always got. Is that good enough? I don't think it's good enough for the 21st century. We need to be the outliers to try things that have never been tried and see if they work. What are we waiting for?
So before we move on to explore each of the competencies, I just want to kind of highlight a few of the things that I heard in that video. We talked about why is it so difficult? Why is social emotional skills so difficult? Why are they hard to teach? Why don't we do it? And you heard him say things like, it's not a program from a binder on a shelf. Adults need to make it their own. It's not something you teach for 5 minutes or practice for 5 minutes with somebody and then you're done. It's something that really needs to be an organic part of everything that we do. So no matter what kind of a forum that you have to be working with people, if you're always thinking about how can I use this as a social emotional learning opportunity, that's going to be the best way for us to promote these skills for ourselves and for everybody that we work with. So let's go ahead and we'll start with doing some thinking, right? So we talked about, let's think about a person in your life or somebody that you're working with right now that you think could use some more support with their social emotional skills. But now we're going to take a little bit more broadly and ask you to spend some time in breakout rooms talking about how do you think this applies to your work specifically, and what do you need to take away today to help you in your own work. So Marcey, I'm going to pass to you. And if you want to add anything more to the explanation of what we're going to do next.
Right. So what the plan was is we're going to put you guys in a breakout room for only 5 minutes. So it's going to be very quick. And we're just going to ask you to take a minute and think about what you just saw and your role and how you might be able to take even just one piece of what you saw and apply it to what you do and to working with the folks that you work with. And I think Lori's going to help us with the breakout room, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I'm going to set up. We have currently 22 participants. How many would you like in each breakout room?
3 would be good.
3? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then if you guys want to share in the chat when you come back, we're going to invite you to, but you do not have to. This is going to be your time to just sort of talk to one another.
If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can just talk to us. It's okay. We could actually, we have enough people here. We could have our own little breakout room right here in the main session if that's easier for folks.
Hello.
Hi. I'm sorry you're having trouble.
Yes, I'm not sure what's happening.
Okay. Well, we can just talk right here. You know, what are you thinking? Where are you? And how are you hopeful that this can help you in your work?
Oh, it is very relevant to me. I'm a school social worker.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I'm assigned to work with the students from the Adhd unit.
Okay.
Very relevant. A lot of trouble controlling emotions and behaviors and self-regulation. So it's very important for me to gain more understanding of the concept.
Okay. And I see Kara is in this room with us, but you're muted, Kara. But if you want to just share here in this space, how you think this might be useful in your work.
I just asked her to unmute as well.
Okay. And Ms. Hodge, would you mind sharing, you said you were a social worker in a school setting?
Volusia County Schools.
Okay. Okay. So then do you travel between schools? Or are you
I do.
mostly
I have 4 schools.
4 schools. Okay. In what area?
In DeLand, Deltona, and Orange City.
Okay. Okay. That's a big area. Is this your first time at the summit?
No, I've done it several times in other roles.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bearing with us as we try to figure out how to do it virtually. I think Lori's doing a great job so far, so good. It's nice to not have to travel, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and worry about parking and all that stuff. Yeah. And what age group do you serve?
Elementary to middle.
Okay. Okay. And any experience with social emotional trainings or things?
Not a lot.
Okay.
There's several things that we use, but I haven't. And I've done some reading. I've had some, but not a whole lot. So it's always good to get more.
Well, I love your attitude, and I think with you know, our current environment with COVID, I think social emotional learning, if it wasn't before, we know now it's going to be even more important as kids come back to school, and you know, we don't really know what they've been up to for the past however many months. And
the adults need it.
Yeah.
Nancy, it's been 5 minutes. Do you want me to send a message to all that will close it in about a minute?
Yes, please.
Okay.
See everybody coming back. That's awesome. Welcome back. All right, welcome back. And Lori, are you able to tell if everybody's back?
It's like we have a couple more.
Okay. That's great. That usually means they're having a nice, rich conversation. And so we always are happy to hear that. For those of you that have already come back, if you want to open up your chat and just share with us kind of the highlights of your conversation or what you're hoping to gain today and how you're feeling like this might apply to your work, that would be really useful for Marcey and myself and kind of help us build a little bit of community here today.
And Nancy, in our group, I was very happy to hear, I think a lot of what folks are looking for, we have bits and pieces of that. So I was explaining how there's so much with social emotional learning. And so we very much, it's a 90-minute session. So we had to kind of pick and choose like what we were going to focus on.
Yeah. And Marcey, I just noticed in the chat from Sarah, the comment that SEL is a cultural shift, not a scripted lesson.
Yes.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. You know, and I think you heard that in that video where at the very end, you know, saying it's not a binder on a shelf. It's not, doesn't come in a package. Yeah. Thanks for that. Cynthia posted skills to help foster parents and others working with kids in foster care work with their kids. Yeah, I'm hopeful that some of this you'd be able to pass along to parents who are doing that just incredible work of taking care of kids who are in difficult situations and possibly in trauma situations. We definitely have a trauma piece at the end of the training. We know that's an important piece of social emotional and that sometimes it gets in the way and we all need to understand how it does and what to do about it. Yeah. We have thank you so much for posting in the chat, everybody. We have a comment, assisting and advocating for a more well-rounded intervention plan using skills building for students who are in need in the schools. Yeah, so we know that in the K-12 world, this is a hot topic, right? We know that not only in our current setting, in our community and in our country, we've got a lot of things going on in schools that cause trauma and stress for kids. And we can definitely see that using social emotional learning can maybe mitigate some of that and help us move away from some of the difficult stuff that's happening in schools today. So yeah, thank you for that.
Do we have everybody back, Lori? We do.
We do. Yes, we do.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing. And I'm hopeful that we've helped you sort of frame your thinking and your mindset to take away some great stuff from today that you can really apply to your work. And also, again, be thinking about who's that one person that you really want to take something away to share with today. So with that, we'll move forward and explore a little bit more deeply the first of the competencies, which is self-awareness. And Marcey is going to take us through this one.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. I don't see the screen yet. Is it coming back up?
Oh, I think I need to reshare. Yep.
Okay.
One more second. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Okay, we got it now?
Yes.
Awesome.
So we really wanted to focus. So self-awareness is a huge topic again. So we're going to zero in on the emotion piece of it here. And so I want you guys to think for just a minute about your feelings like when you're hungry. And this is just a simple question, but Nancy's going to click that video in the top. And I want to see what your thoughts are if you kind of connect with this at all.
All right, here we go.
Oh, you got to hit the reloop for some reason. I don't know what. Oh, no sound. I don't have sound, Nancy. Do you guys have sound?
No, there's no sound.
I don't have sound.
Oh, you didn't get sound. Nobody had sound.
Oh no, you know what? Because I have to reshare the sound. Shoot. Okay, I do that every time. We're gonna try it again. It's short, guys.
So you guys grew up together?
Yeah, since 3rd grade.
Good now?
are you looking at?
I'm not looking at it.
We're not good enough for you. You looking for something else?
No, I don't know.
What are you, big supermodels? Oh, Jesus. Supermodels. What do you model, gloves? What are you doing? The girl's totally into me.
Brad, eat a Snickers.
Why?
Because you get a little angry when you're hungry. Better?
Better. So, ladies.
So, losers.
Stacy, relax.
I'm sorry.
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
So and this is a rhetorical question, but you know, how many of us have been there, right? When you're really hungry and you get that, what do they call it? Hangry feeling, right? So we're going to talk about emotions for a few minutes. So Nancy, if you could go to the next slide for me. So what we want to do here is we want to take a minute and I want to have you guys check in. So think for a minute on a scale of 1 to 10. We want to know how you're feeling today. And why does this matter? Well, because it always matters how someone's feeling, and we don't always know what people are thinking. And for a lot of us here today, like I can't even see you. So I have no idea kind of how you're feeling. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're comfortable, give us a 10 if you're feeling fantastic and you're just so excited to be here today. Or a 1 if, you know, you really should have not even gotten out of bed. I mean, so we all have those days and everybody feels differently. So if we can get just a feel for where you are. And this is a great strategy that you can use with anybody. Now, I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. So on a piece of paper, so I'm going to give you a second to grab one if you need a piece of paper, or in your phone or whatever you have handy. Just write down one word to describe how you feel right now. You don't have to put it in the chat. This is just for you. So just one word. And I see that we have quite a few 8s and 9s and but some 6s. So we want to make sure. And why is this important? So if you're thinking in terms of like when you're working with a group of kids, if we come in every day and we just start the day and we just start moving forward and we don't check in with people to see how they're doing, some kids are very, very good at stifling and hiding their emotions, but it doesn't ever help, right? Because eventually it manifests into something else, doesn't it? It never stays buried, right? And so if we check in with them early on and you see that most of your participants are an 8 or a 9, but you have one person who is checking in at a 3, then that gives you the opportunity to take a minute at some point and go to that person and say, hey, you know, I see you checked in as a 3. Is there anything I can do to help? How, you know, do you want to tell me about it? Because at least they're not just sitting there being unhappy and or having struggles with their emotions. So you guys don't, you can put your word in the chat, but you don't have to. So now if we go to the next slide, please. So on this particular slide, we're gonna, I'm sorry, I'm working from 2 computers, so I keep grabbing the wrong mouse. Okay, so we're gonna play a little game. And so I'm gonna ask you guys to take that piece of paper again that you had. And I'm gonna set my little timer and I'm gonna give you 20 seconds. And I want you in 20 seconds to write down, are you ready? As many feeling words as you can. Go.
Hearing Jeopardy music in my head. Na, 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 na.
And it should end now, but my timer did not ring like it was supposed to. Okay, so you have all your words. So now take a second and count up the number of words that you wrote down. You don't have to tell us what they are. And Lori's gonna throw a, she's gonna throw up a poll. And we're just gonna ask if you could, in the poll, let us know how many emotions that you named in those 20 seconds. And then it should give us a view of everybody's responses without your names. So it's not a contest, I promise. You know, we all, I think, walk around with quotes in our head, and one of the ones that I carry around with me all the time, and I know I will probably misquote it a little bit, but this is how I always think of it, is that people rarely remember what you said, but they always remember how you made them feel, from Maya Angelou. And I know it's longer than that and more intense, but that's how I remember it. And it plays so well into social emotional learning because it's true, right? I mean, we might remember some things that people said, but if they made us feel bad, we definitely remember it. And if they made us feel good, we definitely remember it. So Lori, is there a timer on the poll?
There is a timer. Looks like 86% of the people have voted, and it's been sitting there for a few seconds.
Okay. So we have about 10 more seconds?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. This is a very informal type of science that we're about to do, but we're just, we're kind of curious where you guys are coming from.
All right, we're going to end it.
Can we see the results? Will they come up?
Yep. You want to share them?
Yes, please. But it won't share names, right? Just shows.
Oh,
okay.
no. Can you see it now?
Yes, perfect. Okay. So, you know, it's funny because Nancy and I talked about this. So just so you guys know, the average adult can name between 1 and 5 feelings, but based on our audience and who we knew was coming today, we figured you guys were probably going to have a higher percentage of people with more emotions that you could name.
We definitely have an above average audience, so that's great.
Yeah, I know it is. And so why did we do this? Why does this matter? And so if we go to the next screen or slide, Nancy. So this is why it matters, because most people can remember if you ask them to name emotions, they can name, you know, bad, good, happy, sad, angry. But this wheel, and this is not to be mistaken for the Plutchik wheel, and forgive me if I said that wrong, but I'm 99% sure that's how you say it, the Plutchik wheel. And we gave you a link to the Plutchik wheel so that you could actually go and explore that also if you wanted to. But this is a general wheel that just shows the many, many, many words that can be used to describe emotions and at different levels. So what we would ask you to do at this point, and again, this is just for you, but think about how you're feeling now. You know, you had that word that you used to describe yourself a couple of minutes ago, but if you had this wheel to look at in the beginning, would you have chosen a different word? Is there another word that you would have used that would have better described how you were feeling? And we share this because if we think about it, so if the average adult can name 1 to 5, but we ask kids how they're feeling and expect them to be able to tell us, it's very difficult sometimes. So something like this wheel can even help you give kids or adolescents or adults the words that they might be missing, if that makes sense. And so then you give them just more ways to describe their feelings. And the better that we can describe how we're feeling, the better someone else can help us, right? If we just say we're happy, or let's use sad because that's a little, or angry is a great one, right? So if you ask somebody how they're feeling and they say angry, okay. If they say disrespected, now that's a whole other conversation, isn't it? Now we can figure out how to help them in a much more strategic, intentional way. And so we'll share this with you just so that you have it. So this is a tool that you can use. Again, we've given this to you also in the links. If you guys find as we're going through, if you're looking at any of the links or you can't get to the resources, please let us know so that we can make sure we take care of that before the end. But if it looks like there's any links that are missing, let us know so that we can make sure and add those as well. It's a Google form, so I can just go in and put them in. And I see some chats. So the links resources at the very top of the chat. So if anybody did not get that yet. Okay, and I think, Nancy, is this where we were gonna, so the next slide is sort of the end slide to this section on self-awareness. And these are just some ideas that we wanted to leave you with. So we showed you the wheel. So building the emotions vocabulary is huge. And particularly for folks who may not have that vocabulary. Saying the names of the emotions that we're feeling is also extremely important. So even giving kids or adults sentence stems like when you do this, I feel like this, right? Or when this happens, I feel like this. This helps open up a whole different level of conversation and support that you can provide to people. Identifying what triggers are, that's like both for us and for your clients or people that you're working with. If you know there's something that really, really bothers somebody and really upsets them, then figure out a different way to approach that. We do this oftentimes with children in schools, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. And then reflect on how emotions impact what we say and do. Really stop and think about what we're saying and whether it's the best way to approach a situation with somebody. And I think, Nancy, were we going to ask for questions right here, or do you want to wait till the end?
Yes, I think each time we come to the end of a section, we want to take a moment to pause, give you an opportunity to post some questions or some ideas or some ahas in the chat that might be useful for us to share. So let's just take about 30 seconds or so and see if we've got anything coming into the chat. And Lori, I am unable to see the chat as the sharing my screen. When I look at the chat, I lose my screen. So I'm going to depend on you or Marcy to be the MCs of the chat, please.
Okay. And I just put the Google Doc link back in the chat. So if anybody still needs it, it's a little bit lower down in the conversation now.
And I want to give a recommendation for the Plutchik document. Really another super way to really think about how emotions layer and build, and kind of drilling down to that really key word that really describes your emotion, because it's so useful to be able to do that. So highly recommend you taking a look at that.
Okay, and I don't see any questions yet, Nancy, so we could probably go on.
Okay, all right. So we're going to move on to the next of the 5 competencies, which is self-management. And you can see on the slide here, this is how do we manage our emotions? How do we manage our thoughts and feelings? And you may be wondering, what in the world is this a picture of, and what does this have to do with self-management? So you can see this is tales from an air traffic control tower. It does have something to do with social emotional learning. It's a really good analogy to kind of explain what is self-management like, and how can we, what's a way that we can think about it. So I'm going to go ahead and play the video. It's about just short of 2 minutes, so it's a quick one. And then we'll come back and talk about it a little bit. And let me make sure that I have my sound shared. I do. Here we go.
Just down to 150. I've got some football students returning back to local 3. The last West one weeks off of the park race already.
62 heavy contact park chapter flight. When you push back off the gate, you're going to be talking to an air traffic controller from the minute you start taxiing to the runway till you get to your final destination. We have 5 parallel runways, and I was working departures off of runway 28.
Position 111 contact departure flight.
I'm talking directly to the pilot in the cockpit, and I'm issuing lineup and wait procedures, which means he'll line up on the runway, and I'm issuing takeoff clearances.
382 contact departure.
We run 2,700 airplanes a day. Volume breeds complexity here in Atlanta. There's so many aircraft calling for taxi instructions, so many aircraft returning from the landing runways trying to get to the gates. You're asking an air traffic controller what their beverage of choice is probably coffee. You got to stay alert, and you got to be focused at all times. Because of the volume that we have here, we run probably about 5 or 6 emergencies a shift. There's a cardiac arrest patient, a woman that's going into labor on an aircraft, people having strokes on aircraft, smoke in the cockpit. That happens here every shift, every single day. And when these aircraft come into the airspace, we get them into the airport as quickly as possible. You probably wouldn't even notice it. It's just another day at work, and the guys, they're professionals. We just keep moving though. But we all don't work in air traffic.
Okay.
Control towers.
Excuse me. So what did you hear in that? What were some keywords? Some keywords that jump out to me in that one is thousands of decisions to be made every day, right? And so is that true for us? Do we make thousands of decisions every day? I'm sure that we do. And when you really think about the minutia of life, you know, from what am I going to wear today to, you know, am I going to have a coffee or a tea, to how am I going to get to work today? We're making decisions all the time. all the time, just like they are in that air traffic control tower. And we got to keep those decisions going, because if we don't, we get stuck, right? So we got to keep moving without incident, right? We don't want to have a crisis. We don't want to have a breakdown. Beverage of choice, coffee. Yeah, right. Because we got to keep ourselves moving and making those decisions. We have crisis every day, right? So it might not be smoke in the cockpit or a lady going into labor, but we run into crisis every day. Darn it, there's a detour on my way to work. Oh, my computer's not working. Oh, the sound's not working on the video. And so we've got to be thinking about how can we problem solve that and keep moving forward. So I really am a fan of thinking about our brain as that air traffic control tower that we need to keep us going and moving forward every day. So when we think about executive function, and we think about it in that framework of an air traffic control tower situation, I like to think about three components of executive function. Now, you may see some definitions of executive function that have more. They're broken down a little bit more specifically. But for our purposes today, I'd like us to kind of think about it as these three separate components. So working memory, what does that look like for these air traffic controllers? Well, they have to have a working knowledge of the airport. You saw he had that little stack up of planes. Here's the planes I'm working with right now. And what do I need to do? I need to know how to get them in. I need to know how to get them out. I need to know what runways I have available. Very similar to what we do, right? I need to have a working knowledge of how do I make a cup of coffee? How do I get to work? How does my computer work? How do I turn it on? What do I do if I have a problem? All those things we need to keep very close to the front of our mind as we're moving through our day. So that working memory and that working knowledge is really, really important. But we also need to be on the lookout for unexpected situations. And so that's where that mental flexibility comes in. What happens if I come upon a roadblock? What happens if the sound doesn't work? What happens if the internet goes down? How do I deal with those things and still get to that goal of a safe landing or giving you a fantastic presentation today? So we need to make sure that we have that mental flexibility available to us. And then self-control. How do I stay calm when the sound doesn't work, right? How do I keep from getting frustrated when there's an accident on 95 and I can't get where I need to go on time? So all of those things play together to create that skill called executive function, which really for me translates to self-management. There is a fantastic resource in the Google document. It's my favorite one on executive function. It comes from Harvard, and it's just a really beautiful infographic that talks not only about executive function, but the things that can get in the way of executive function. And certainly one of those things is trauma, right? So if you're having a bad day, as Marcey described, if you're at a 3 today, your executive function might not be working very well. Think about a day when you run into challenges, but you're approaching it from a good place because you had a great weekend, and that I can do anything today because I'm in a really good place, as opposed to, oh, I just got my second COVID vaccine and I'm dragging, and executive function is going to be a challenge for me today. So it's never the same every day. And it's really situation dependent, can we make it through the day or not, based on where we're coming from and how we can draw on those executive function skills to help us do what we need to do. We also have a plethora of other resources on executive function. I have them listed here in my notes. So please, at some point after the presentation today or after the summit today, take a moment to peek at some of those resources on executive function. It's so important to what we do ourselves and also as we work with others. So how can we support executive function? How can we do some things that will make this easier for people? The first one here, and gosh, I have lots of bullets for you here on this slide. Establishing routines and visual supports. I know we have some folks from the Early Learning Coalition on the call today, and those of us that have responded on what we call warm line calls, where we have a child who's struggling maybe with behavior in the classroom, one of the first things we go to is, do we have a routine? Do we have visual supports? Do we help the child know what comes next? That makes it easier for them if they're struggling a little bit with that working memory. I don't have to bring up those routine things because I have a visual cue that can help me do that. So visual supports, routines are so helpful to all of us. I know when I get up in the morning, I have a routine that I follow, and if I get out of it, I'm in trouble. So I think we all use those things to help us and support that working memory piece of executive function. Breaking tasks into smaller chunks helps. so that we're not trying to keep lots of stuff up in that working memory all at one time, but we can take it a little bit at a time. Creative, caring, encouraging environments, creating caring and encouraging environments is so important. Kids and adults and all of us need to know that if we goof up, it's okay. If I'm out of 3 today, it's okay. I'm going to make it through, and there's people around me that will support and help me, and learning from that. And how did I cope when I was having that not so great day? And how did I make it through? And how can I learn from that for next time? Playing games that require rule following and impulse control, because we know that sometimes when we get frustrated, we can go off the deep end, and that's not helpful. So if we can play games and do things that help us with that impulse control, that's really useful for little kids, or even for bigger kids sometimes. Red light, green light, freeze tag. Maybe you've played those games yourself, or you've played them with others. If you're in an early learning environment, you've maybe played those games. Great for learning impulse control. And with older kids, any kind of game can work, where there's rules and there's things that you have to do and steps to follow. Sports, participation in sports is a great way, where there are rules and things that we just have to do to kind of control those impulses. And so how do we support that flexible thinking? So when we run into a problem, how can we try to find another solution? Doing something in new ways is a really useful way to do that. So you might think about, in a very simple example, how can I eat an apple? Well, I could bite into it. I could cut it up into wedges. I could slice it crosswise. I could slice it lengthwise. So as we work with people, kind of challenging or taking opportunities to think about how can I do something in a new way to increase that ability and that flexibility in our thought. Lots of different tasks that we do every day that we can use to explore that and practice that flexibility of thought.
Nancy, you have some good questions, not questions, but comments in the chat.
Excellent.
So like what I'm seeing, and forgive me if I miss anyone, I think I see them all. Oh, wait, now I lost it. Hang on. So we're going to keep going is what I hear. Staying alert to what is happening so you can manage crisis. And then I also see crisis as a normal day for us. What I'm hearing very much is that for many of us who work in these different helping fields, that we do spend a lot of time managing crisis, but oftentimes it's not necessarily our crisis, but it becomes our crisis, doesn't it? Because we're helping people manage through their crisis. And oftentimes I think executive functioning is a struggle for many people who are living in crisis, because everything is kind of so out of whack anyways. And then I see, I think Cher said, I think it helps to have someone help you with this as well. My husband can sometimes get me right out of the craziness I'm in because he's on the outside. And so I believe that's true. And that's true for us too, right? As the people who are helping somebody who's struggling with this. And then Julia says, how is this different for children with ADHD?
Yeah, so much more challenging for them, right? Yeah, and so just that ability to practice. So breaking those things down into smaller and smaller steps until the child can be successful. Making sure to acknowledge when something goes well and using that specific praise. Wow, I know it was really hard for you not to go off the deep end when Marcey took your car that you were playing with, but you took a step back and you calmed down and you figured it out. So, just again, those same things that we have up here in the bullets, establishing those routines, breaking into smaller tasks. Playing the games can be really useful too, just to get that practice of kind of stopping when you feel that urge to go off the deep end, or you're getting to where a place where you can't think to do the right thing. Stopping and taking that moment to take a breath. And those games that require impulse control are really useful in that.
And Nancy, can I add something here?
Yeah.
And I'm in response to Julia's question, at the top you have the routines with visual supports. So those visual supports are huge for children who are struggling. For example, if you have, say in the morning, like when we say to kids, okay, I need you to get ready for school. And then 10 minutes later, they're like, they have one shoe on and one sock on the other foot, and they're, still kind of floundering around. This is probably a child who's struggling a little with executive functioning, but one way that you can help them is to actually get them all dressed with their backpack, stand them by the door and take their picture, and then show them you know, when I say that I want you to be ready to leave for school, this is what you should look like. Does that make sense? And just repeat that with them. Because oftentimes we say things, and for kids or even adults, sometimes we assume they know what we want. But if we haven't visually shown them, then they may struggle with it a little bit. So that's the tip I could add there.
Okay, thank you for those great questions. And yeah, definitely true that for children with attention deficit, you know, this can be very difficult, specifically that impulse control. And so really exploring those ways that we can help them practice that impulse control so that they can do it when it really counts.
Yes, yeah. Great strategy from Sarah too. So if you guys can see in the chat.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. All right, I think we're ready to move on to our next of our competencies, which is social awareness. And Marcey is going to take this one.
Yes, and I'm doing a time check for myself. So we're at 9:55 a.m. Okay.
Okay.
So social awareness, this is the ability to understand the perspectives of and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds, cultures, and contexts. So this is a huge, huge topic, I think, for all of us on multiple levels. If we can go to the next slide, Nancy. We're going to start with and we're going to go out. I wrote it down. I think we're going to go, 1.5 minutes into this video, but we're going to take a minute to challenge your thinking. So if you're ready, make sure everybody can hear it. Here we go.
Here we go.
Let's start with a brain exercise. I'm going to ask you to visualize 3 scenarios. The visualization part is very important, so please close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine you're late to catch a flight. You rush through the airport, you make it through security, you run to the gate, you make it down the jetway, you step on the plane just as they close the door behind you, and the pilot steps out of the cockpit to say hi. You get to your destination, you go to a local restaurant, and you have the best meal of your life. I mean, really enjoy this. There's no calories in visualization. And at the table next to you is a couple happily celebrating their anniversary. The next morning, you go to the biggest technology conference in the world. And the CEO of this year's hottest tech startup just took the stage to speak. Now you should have a solid picture of all of that. So open your eyes, because I have some questions for you. In your mental image, was the pilot black? Was the married couple 2 men? Did the tech CEO on stage look like me? It's okay if one or all of your answers is no. Your brain creates images of what's familiar. It's less of a fan of what's not familiar.
Okay, so we'll stop there. We shared that with you. Well, personally, I found it extremely eye-opening when it was a TED Talk that I saw, and Nancy shared that with me. And I felt like it was a great opportunity for us to have some internal dialogue with ourselves, right? Biases are an area that I personally, I work on a lot, and I've engaged with some amazing groups that I'm going to, one in particular that I'm going to share with you today. But I wanted to share a few resources with you. You don't have to tell us what your images were, but it's important that we start having these conversations with ourselves if we're going to address social awareness. The movie, this blue box that you're seeing on your screen, is a documentary. It's not free, unfortunately, but I think it's like $2 on Amazon Prime. But this is an interesting documentary that was done on biases. And, you know, the title is "If You're Human, You're Biased, Now What?" Right? And we know that's true, right? We all have biases. It doesn't matter who we are. And the reasons why we have them is what is kind of explained and discussed in this documentary. And it's interesting because it goes all the way back to like prehistoric age, right? And so a lot of it is brain development and, our fight or flight mode. And it's not because of things that we're outwardly thinking, but it's because of something called implicit biases, right? And so they're biases that we have that we don't even know we have. So I share that documentary with you just if you're interested in learning more about that. The second image you have there is Project Implicit, that it was shared with me, and so I'm sharing it with you. This is a project out of Harvard, I believe, and full disclosure, it is a research project. So they are collecting data, but I circled that little area at the bottom because what this is a place where you can go and you can take these really interesting quizzes on implicit biases, and you can take them on different topics. So there are all different topics that people may have biases in. But if you go through where I circled at the bottom, you don't have to log in. So if you don't want your data necessarily included, with your name and information, you can just go in there and you can take any of these tests. And it will actually give you a read on what your biases are. And I've taken a few of them. I eventually will take all of them because if we don't know, we don't know, right? And so how can we fix it if we don't know it exists? And when it's implicit, we don't know, right? So another area that I've started working in for myself personally to address just biases and differences and understanding people better is I have started engaging with this last square, and this group is called Preemptive Love. And it is an organization that actually was started overseas, and it was a couple, I believe, and I could get their background wrong, but I believe this is how they started it, that went into, they were in the Middle East and they were going in and they were helping in areas where help was needed, right? And so they just went over there to try and help people that needed things. What happened from all of this is they created this organization, and their number one goal is to stop war globally. But the way that they are looking at doing that is really by reducing some of these implicit biases and getting people to start listening to one another and understanding one another. They want you to step outside your comfort zone, and they invite you into this community of peacemakers. But they say, the real reason that we're divided as a country, as a world, as a community is because we don't talk to each other. Right? We kind of live sometimes in our silos, and our differences aren't going away. And this is directly from them, but there is something we can do with them by stepping outside our echo chambers and towards one another. And so the way that they do this, and the reason I'm sharing it with you, is they have these things called gatherings. And their definition is gatherings are a space for people from all walks of life to listen, learn, and grow in relationships. Through small group style meetups, we seek to create friendship opportunities between people whose lives would not normally overlap for the purpose of growing in empathy, understanding, and peace. Each new gathering is part of our work to create the most diverse community of peacemakers on the planet and end the next war before it even begins. So that's their mission. It's free. I mean, it's a nonprofit. I've engaged in several of their workshops and gatherings at this point. We have one locally here in Daytona Beach that we meet virtually right now because COVID, but they are going to go back to, I think, meeting face-to-face in the future. But if it's something that you're interested in, I just wanted to share it with you and let you know that it was a resource that's out there. You can start your own gathering. You don't have to go to one that already exists, and they have all the tools and resources to help you do that if it's something that you would like to do. So I think we can go to the next slide, Nancy. So as we leave this section, we think about how can we increase empathy and perspective taking. So some of the bullets that are there, ask you to, ask others or yourself, how do you think they're feeling and why do they feel that way? Listen to other people as they describe their thoughts and feelings. And it's really important to listen to people's stories, right? So really, really listen, like not just listen to move forward, but actually listening to understand. And I'm going to give you some options for some intentional practice. So if you take a minute, consider the amount of diversity in your life and how do you increase that? Is there a way that you can increase that? There are lots of podcasts on this topic. Pay attention to what your own emotions reveal. So when you're listening or you're meeting somebody new or think about whether your emotions are based in some biases, or if you really are listening in an open way, expand your circle, just be intentional with it. That would be, my recommendation. And then I think this leads very nicely, Nancy, into the next section on listening, correct?
It does. And I'm Lori, is there anything in the chat that we need to bring forward before we move to the next competency?
I'm not seeing anything. I just, one of the responses was that someone had done the racial bias question set, and it was eye-opening, really simple to do. So I wanted to share that.
Great. Thank you, Lori. All right. So we're moving to our next competency, relationship skills. Marcy's going to lead us through this one as well.
Yes, this is me as well. So this is the ability to establish and maintain healthy and supportive relationships and effectively navigate settings with diverse individuals and groups. So you probably can see why I said this last section definitely leads into this. So in the next one, we have one more little video for you. And again, it's only 1 minute. So if you can click play, and
here we go.
It's just, there's all this pressure, and sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way.
So we wanted to share that. That's from Stephen Covey, by the way. I felt like I really should have given him credit for that, and I did not. But that's from his website. But yeah, it's not about the nail. And I think I've been listening to a lot of Brene Brown lately, and I don't know if you guys listen to her podcast or not, but she's amazing. So one of them that I was listening to recently, she had a guest speaker on, and he was really talking about this idea of when you listen, are you listening to try to solve the other person's problem? Because stop. Right? So we need to listen and encourage them to keep talking and ask thought-provoking questions so that you can actually assist them in coming to their own meaningful conclusions, as opposed to us giving the answer, because oftentimes we don't have the right answer, even though we think we do. And so that's a little, kind of an interesting something about listening. Some points that I would add, just some things to think about are, when you're talking to people, like, are you asking questions from a real place of curiosity? Or again, are you just trying to solve the problem, right? Because it's not always about the nail. Sometimes there's something else that's going on. And are you asking questions? And I ask myself this all the time. Am I asking things that I think I already know the answers to? Or am I asking genuine questions? So am I placing my values over someone else's because I think mine are better or that I'm right? So that's a hard place to come from, right? But it ties in really nicely with the social awareness piece, because we don't always have the answers. And then I think, when we think about listening posture, it's that idea of having this really radical openness to others. Like I'm listening to you because I really care and I want to hear what you have to say, as opposed to, I'm just listening, thinking about what I'm going to say to respond to you. So those are just some tips and things to think about. And then, if we go to the next slide, Nancy, this is extremely important. Like we cannot disagree with another person's experience, right? I had somebody tell me this one time, and the way that they said it to me was, you don't get to tell me, like, if I did something to hurt you, I don't get to tell you that you're not hurting. Does that make sense? Like we cannot disagree with someone's experience. Whether we think they should be feeling that, shouldn't be feeling that, it doesn't matter, because it's their experience, not ours. And so we have to really just embrace that and listen and really try to understand. And I love this all but stink. And I'm going to share that. I'm going to let Nancy share this, because this was something that she shared with me. And I thought it was something really important for us to think about.
Yeah, well, so I remember a training, and that was the takeaway that I had from is that whenever we say the word but, we negate everything that came before. So I like you, but it really aggravates me when you do this. Or, well, yeah, we can go outside, but you have to do this first. So like you just negated everything else because the but gets in the way, right? So all but stink, and we need to try real hard to take that word out of our vocabulary. And I'm going to jump down to the last one that says yes and. So rather than say the but, we need to say the yes and. So you're feeling bad today, yes, and I can really tell that you are. And what more can we do about that, instead of, I see you're feeling really bad today, but you still have to get this work done, right? So changing that way that we respond sometimes, and helping other people learn to respond in those ways too. So exactly. Helping them acknowledge that sometimes others are not coming from their best place, and how can we deal with that?
And I think the first time someone shared that with me about taking but out of my vocabulary, it was when working with children, and so I think, it works everywhere, but the fact that as soon as you say but, you've negated everything you said. So it doesn't matter how much you say, I love the way you did this, I appreciate you did this. If you say but, everything you said before that, they don't hear anymore. So it was life altering for me. Like when I learned that. The last one that I wanted to point out too, and I thought this was a great quote that someone shared with me recently, but empathy does not require agreement. So you can empathize with people you don't have to agree with them. So that's pretty critical, because I think we always think of empathy in terms of, I have to have lived it and done it, and, to really fully understand. And sometimes that is true, but sometimes it's not, right? So everything's gray. There's no real black and white in feelings and how we treat one another, except that it needs to be good. And then I saw a quote, actually was from one of the Love Anyway sessions that I attended, and one of the other participants said this, and it just really stuck with me. So I wanted to share it with you guys. But we were talking about privilege and what does privilege mean, and who has privilege. And she said that she had attended another session where someone said privilege is the freedom to walk away from the issue. And so it's pretty powerful when you think about it. So I'm going to leave you with that for this section, and thinking about, talking and listening. So just keep practicing, right? And create relationship friendly climates. Even if you don't agree, if it's your client and somebody you're working with, then, you still want them to feel comfortable and feel like they belong, and that they're in the place that they need to be.
Yeah. And just thinking about this in an early learning environment, these are skills that maybe a 4 or a 5 or a 3-year-old isn't ready for. So if you're the adult in that environment, it's even more important for you to practice these things and model that behavior for them. So really to pay attention to what's developmentally appropriate for those folks that we're working with, and what's it appropriate for us to expect. Okay.
And we've got some stuff in the chat, Nancy. And
let me go back. Yep.
Mindful of time. We're at 10:12 now. I'm looking. Okay. Can you list out each of the competencies, please? So yes, and if you go to the CASEL website, which we gave you a link to in the resources, they have a really nice graphic there where you'll be able to see them all.
Yes. Yeah.
And you'll also, I think, get access to this recorded session as well. Oh, look, Lori did it. I'm sorry, I didn't read far enough. Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Lori.
Somebody said I love Brene Brown. She's my all-time favorite. I do too. And Sarah said she's tried to retrain her brain to say and instead of but. I love that. And did I get everybody? I think I got them all. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you so much for those comments. That's really awesome. Okay, so this is the last of the 5 responsible decision-making, ability to make caring and constructive choices in our lives. And I think that's important no matter where we are in life. And I think everybody learns every day how to do it better. But what we know is that some people struggle with it, and particularly children and teenagers struggle with it. Well, why is that? It's because their brains are developed differently. And so this is a very busy slide, and I apologize, but it was the best one I could think of to kind of share with you why that is. And so when we look and when we think about the way we make decisions, adults think with that prefrontal cortex. So that's this piece up here, right? And after 25 years old, that's developed pretty solid for us. And that's our rational part. So we can make rational decisions pretty easily. But for a teenager, that is not very well developed. And so they're processing mostly with this piece, the amygdala, which is, as you can see, passion, impulse, fear, and aggression. And so think of yourself as a teenager. Some of us are further away from that than others, but I bet you can think back to a time when you made a decision that maybe wasn't made from that logical prefrontal cortex of your brain, but was made from that amygdala. And how did that turn out? When I thought back on that as I was developing the training, I could think of lots of things that I did, particularly in college, maybe, that, I definitely made decisions based on passion or impulse and not really thinking about, what are the consequences of this? And thank goodness I'm still here to tell the tales. But I imagine many of us can think of some things. And so again, it's that perspective taking of thinking about those folks that you're working with, and particularly young children, teenagers. Sometimes it's just that's where they are in their brain. And so that's why we need to be those kind of guides by their side to help them practice those skills of going to that rational part of their brain. And just kind of reviewing through here the other parts of the brain that are not quite fully developed. You can see here, they sometimes teens don't process information effectively as adults. So that's why we're needing to repeat things, break things down into smaller chunks. Sometimes we get more excited by reward than consequence if you're a little one. And so that's why it's hard for them to delay gratification. Many of you maybe have heard of the marshmallow test, and there's some great new research on that, which is in the resources for you. I encourage you to check that out. So kind of giving that grace to those that you're working with, that if they are little ones, or they're teenagers, or they're kiddos in the K-12 world, it's hard for them sometimes to practice this skill because their brain just isn't developed enough to really have them do it consistently and successfully. So a way that you might think about that person. So think back, remember at the beginning of the training, we said, try to think of that one person. There's always in a preschool classroom, there's that one kid, but maybe in your caseload or your workload or your classroom, there's that one child that you're really struggling with, that one person you're really struggling with. And as you have those struggles, maybe try to think about it in this way. Are they in their upstairs brain or their downstairs brain? And then I think, Cher, you kind of talked about this a little bit. When we get into those crisis situations, sometimes we get into that downstairs brain. And what happens in the downstairs brain is decisions that are based on passion, that are based on emotion, that are based on reactivity. And so things that happen in that downstairs brain are sometimes not our best responsible decisions. So what we want to try to do is get into that upstairs brain, that front part of our brain where we can make decisions from places of empathy, from places of morality, from places where we're using our executive function to use our working memory, our decision-making, and our flexibility to make good choices. And for adults, it's much easier for us to make that shift upstairs for children and for teens, and particularly for people who are experiencing trauma or are in high stress situations. They're going to be in that downstairs brain. And so we need to acknowledge that and figure out ways to get them up to that upstairs brain and use those logical thinking skills. How do we practice this? This is a great model, and you have this in your resources. It's called Kolb's Cycle of Experiential Learning. Again, we talked at the very beginning that this is not a binder on a shelf. This is not a checklist. This is not a unit that you will do it 5 minutes every day and you're done. But it's using experiences every day throughout everything that you're doing to practice this skill of responsible decision-making. So when we have an experience, that's step one, we want to observe and reflect on that. Well, what happened when you took that truck out of Johnny's hand? Well, he got kind of upset and he hit me. Oh, well, maybe we need to think about another way to do that. Let's think about in an abstract way, so not a concrete doing it way, but in an abstract way, what might happen if you did this or this, and then testing it out. and then returning to the cycle over and over again until we develop that ability to make good, responsible decisions. So this is a great resource. I think it works at all levels. So I encourage you to take a peek at that in the resources. So again, how do we support more responsible decision-making for ourselves, for teens, for little ones, for whoever we might be working with? Use that cycle of experience, reflect, think, and then act again, and keep moving through it for the littlest things or the biggest things in life. Again, and you're right, I copied this exactly from the other slide because it's important in this situation too. We need those caring, encouraging environments that support learning from experience. And we're gonna try to move quickly so that we can get to that piece of our presentation about that growth mindset, which really is gonna put us in that place of learning and caring and not being punitive when things go wrong, but using those as opportunities. Start small, start with the smallest of situations and decisions and move forward from that. And again, just patience and practice in doing this and getting from that downstairs to that upstairs brain. I see we might have some stuff coming into the chat, so let me take a moment for that.
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay.
We have, I think the next session doesn't start until 11. So we have about 10 minutes left. We may go a little over, but I guess I'll just say it now. If anyone needs to leave because you have to go eat, or we're okay. But I would like to finish for the sake of the recording too.
Yes, and apologies. And yeah, if we can try to get the rest of it on the recording, but you can come back to it, we'll be happy to do that. Thanks. I'll let you go, Marcy. Oh, this is me still, trauma. So we've been talking throughout the presentation about, the brain is very involved in social emotional learning and social emotional skills. And so what happens when there's trauma? Well, certainly that affects the brain and it slows your brain down. I think I will skip this video. This video is in your resources, but it basically talks about how toxic stress derails healthy development. And so what happens when we're in toxic, stressful situations is that we can't make those connections in our brain. We get stuck in that downstairs brain. And it's really important to acknowledge that so that we can have appropriate expectations. And so what is trauma-informed social emotional learning and social emotional expectations? Well, these things I think are things that you've been hearing throughout the presentation today. So the same things that work every day work for trauma-related care too, but maybe we just need to implement them to a higher degree or maybe more frequently. Again, predictable routines are so very important when people are in stress. So when I'm running late for work, it's really important that I know that I got these things to do before I walk out the door. And I don't have to think about it. I don't have to depend on that working memory to get things done and be successful. Strong supportive relationships. I think Cher mentioned earlier that she's got somebody in her life that kind of helps calm her down. We need those strong supportive relationships around us to help us get, again, out of that downstairs brain and up into that part of the brain where we can really think. Empowering agency. So you heard it in the opening video. When students know, or when people know who they are, it's much easier to implement these skills. So kind of empowering that agency of I can make decisions for myself, and it's okay if I make a mistake because I can learn from it and move forward. Brene Brown is great on this, right? I think her book is the blessings of imperfection, right? Nobody's perfect, and we all need to be learning every day from what we do. Developing those self-regulation skills, the ability to calm down. You see the thermostat there, right? And I think somebody mentioned in early learning settings, this is particularly important. We need those calm down spaces where we can go to take a break. Again, getting out of that downstairs brain and up into that upstairs brain where we can think and make good decisions. And opportunities to explore individual and community identities. Again, back to that, who am I and what's my role? And how can I be productive in whatever setting I am, whether it's an early learning classroom or a K-12 classroom or in life. What is that way that I can contribute, and what do I need to do to be a productive and a contributing member of the group that I'm in? All right, throw into you, Marcy, for growth mindset, unless we have anything in the chat, which I don't see that we do.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, so growth mindset, this, and I want you guys to see just the first couple of minutes of this video because this is Carol Dweck and it's her work. And so if you're familiar with growth mindset, you know that. If you're not, well, then this is my gift to you. So
here we go.
Obsessed with getting A's.
Go back to the beginning.
Raising kids who don't know how to dream big dreams.
There we go.
The power of yet. I heard about a high school in Chicago where students had to pass a certain number of courses to graduate, and if they didn't pass a course, they got the grade not yet. And I thought that was fantastic, because if you get a failing grade, you think, I'm nothing, I'm nowhere. But if you get the grade not yet, you understand that you're on a learning curve. It gives you a path into the future. Not yet also gave me insight into a critical event early in my career, a real turning point. I wanted to see how children coped with challenge and difficulty. So I gave 10-year-olds problems that were slightly too hard for them. Some of them reacted in a shockingly positive way. They said things like, I love a challenge, or, I was hoping this would be informative. They understood that their abilities could be developed. They had what I call a growth mindset. But other students felt it was tragic, catastrophic. From their more fixed mindset perspective, their intelligence had been up for judgment, and they failed. Instead of luxuriating in the power of yet, they were gripped in the tyranny of now. So what do they do next? I'll tell you what they do next. In one study, they told us they would probably cheat the next time instead of studying more if they failed a test. In another study, after a failure, they looked for someone who did worse than they did so they could feel really good about themselves. And in study after study, they have run from difficulty. Scientists measured the electrical activity from the brain as students confronted an error. On the left, you see the fixed mindset students. There's hardly any activity. They run from the error. They don't engage with it. But on the right, you have the students with the growth mindset, the idea that abilities can be developed. They engage deeply. Their brain is on fire with yet. They engage deeply. They process the error.
Thank you. So next slide, we were going to have you guys go ahead and check your mindset, but you can do this later. You don't have to do it right now. This is like an 8-question quiz, and it's kind of a neat little evaluation, if you will, on sort of where you fall in the growth mindset platform. If we go to the next slide, Nancy. So that will be in your resources, so you guys can do that on your own. So this is a nice graphic that just kind of shows you the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And what's interesting to me, and I didn't realize this early on when I started reading some of her work, but the people who struggle sometimes the most with this are our most gifted learners, which is interesting. And I shouldn't probably say struggle because it just is or it isn't, right? But I should say the ones with the most fixed mindset sometimes are our brightest kids because they're used to doing really well. And so when they come up against a challenge, sometimes that's more of a struggle for them than it is for students who may have struggled a little bit more in the beginning or along the way. And if you look at this graphic, you'll see at the bottom from the fixed mindset that you, as a result, oftentimes you'll plateau early and you achieve less than the full potential if you don't have that ability to kind of look at things from a growth mindset, where somebody who just naturally has a growth mindset is somebody who's more like, oh, well, I tried hard, but I didn't get it, but I could get it next time. So if I keep working at it, I'll get there. Those people tend to reach a higher level of achievement. Now, if we look at the next slide, Nancy, this is where we wanted to do a little activity with you guys. So do we have a volunteer that would turn their camera on? And I don't want to, I know we only have one camera on right now, so I don't want to pick on that person. So if there's anybody else that would be willing to do something with us real quick. Oh, look, Sarah jumped in. Hi, Sarah. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you, Sarah, because we're going to show you a little bit about feedback. So what we're going to ask you to do, Sarah, is we're going to ask you to try to pat your head and rub your stomach at the same time in a counterclockwise way. Yeah. Okay, and now Nancy and I are going to give you some feedback. And so I'm going to tell you, you did an amazing job at that. You must be really, really smart. I can tell that you are a very smart person. And then Nancy's feedback would be?
Well, I noticed that you really thought about that and that you took your time to make sure that you were ready to begin. And then you were successful in rubbing your tummy one way and patting your head with the other. And I can see that you're really skilled with that kind of a task. You worked really hard at it.
So Sarah, which of those two types of feedback did you prefer? There's no right or wrong answer.
I liked Marcey's.
Interesting, right? So, but let me ask you this question. So I said, because I directly said you were really smart, didn't I? But would that have encouraged you to move forward? And that's kind of the point that we're making. Or was I really making a judgment on you based on what I thought and I believed? And so when we think about feedback, and we can go to the next slide, Nancy, because it really elaborates this a lot. Because there are lots of people that would say that, right? That they would prefer that fixed kind of feedback, like you must be smart, you must be bright. But the growth feedback that Nancy gave is actually the one that will help people move forward in their growth, right? So then once I tell you that you're really smart and you're really good at that, then you're done, right? Because you accomplished it and you're finished. Where Nancy talked more about how much effort that you put into it. And so hopefully then if we came back and gave you a harder task, you would feel motivated even if you didn't do well with it. And I'm going to say, Sarah, you actually were very good at that. Most people are not.
Yes.
It's not, that's like a small percentage of people that can actually do that well. So the last type of feedback on this slide that we just wanted to point out is sort of something new that they've been talking about. It's dependent feedback. And so we have to be very careful with this type of feedback, because when we say things like, I'm really proud of you, or I'm glad that you listened to my advice, or that has made my day, then your client or your student or your child that you're working with, where is their motivation coming from? It be coming from me, right? So it's an external motivator, and they're gaining their growth and their knowledge and their happiness from what I'm feeling. And we don't want that. Like, we want our children and our clients and our people that we work with to find that intrinsic motivation and to understand that it's going to come from them. Like, we want them to really have that internal praise and that ability to move themselves forward without having me as the need to use it. It's like the reward and punishment system. That's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. So I think we almost made our time. We've got one more slide, and we were going to leave you guys with this one. It's just the power of yet. So anytime you're meeting with folks and they say they can't do this, well, you can't do it yet. Well, this doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work yet. I don't know. You don't know yet, right? And you guys can read the rest. So I guess we could have questions at this point too.
Yeah. Thanks, Marcey. And I know usually we end with the thank you slide. So I do want to thank you all for hanging with us today. I see some people are dropping off. So thank you for hanging with us and getting through to the end of this. And thank you for your comments and your engagement, and really appreciate you being here today, and hope you have a great rest of your day. And please, if you take nothing else with you, please take with you the power of yet for yourself, for the kids or the adults that you work with. Social emotional learning can be hard, and it can be affected by lots of things. And so we just need to always keep that attitude of we can grow, we can do this, we can do it better every day. I know I do. So thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. And we have lots of great comments. So we're glad that you guys enjoyed it, those who did. And I saw Cher has a comment.
Oh, just real quick. It was just to the last slide. So I have two kids, and when my first one was really, really little, a friend of mine told me to compliment her by saying, wow, look at all the green you used in that painting, as opposed to, oh, wow, I love this painting. You did great. And it just really reminded me of this chart right here that I can see. Just really focusing on what they did and what was their effort as opposed to focusing on them. And I mean, she was so little, I hadn't gotten to that point yet. I mean, she was just, I don't know, 6 months old or something, but it was, I always remembered that. And then later on, I was like, oh my gosh, like, did I not praise her enough as far as, wow, we're so proud of you, you're awesome. Because I was always focused on what my kids did, and wow, look at all the time it took you to do this, and look at this and look at that, you know, and just based on my one friend telling me, I don't know where she got it from, but I just took that in and used it my whole parenting. My kids are 16 and 18 now, so
and it's also
really good advice.
Sure, what you're talking about too is process over product, right?
Right.
And it does work. And I saw that somebody just commented on Becky Bailey, and I got all excited. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, Sarah, it's noticing, right? So you're right. And thank you for sharing that, Cher, because it's huge. And a lot of times as parents, we do get caught in that parent trap. And I was in a session not too long ago, and I was telling the participants that feedback is a process, right? Like a long time ago, they used to tell us all, you know, tell them good job. And then it was like, don't tell them good job. Right. Say fantastic instead of good job. And, you know, so it is a process, and we're learning. And that's where like this dependent feedback is kind of new on the scene. And so it is a process, but you're right. And I'm glad that you were able to get that advice. And sometimes it's one small piece, and hopefully we've given you guys something today. I know it was a lot of information, but like maybe one thing that you could take and implement like that. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank both of you for presenting today. I appreciate all the time and effort. It was a great presentation, and it looks like we did have a lot of very positive comments. For those of you, there's more of you that are jumping off. For those of you that have attended the session, thank you for attending the session. If you want to, I put the link in for the next session that you go to, and we'll see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori, for your help today. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.